welcome to this webinar. It's all about how to remove delivery bottlenecks using Asana. We are Generation Digital. We are a Platinum Solutions Partner for Asana. We cover strategy, onboarding, adoption, and operational design. And today we're going to work through how to get real clear visibility and clarity for processes created in Asana. Any questions you have throughout today, please let us know in the chat, and TJ, my colleague on the call, will be able to help out as we go through. So I think the first start point we need to address is why certain delivery bottlenecks actually take place. And across many different organizations, these of course can look very different and unique, but mainly come down to these three key points, where there is too much information, too much clarity, and not enough certainty in the output of what we do. This is sort of the busyness problem, where there are too many deliverables to keep track of. The second aspect of this is around ownership of actions and the dependent work, the actions required to complete an outcome, is unclear. And the visibility of risk as well, not being able to intervene sooner or highlight that risks can take place. And Asana has a large array of features that can help us actually mitigate some of these issues. And so what we want to build is an operational clarity model, and this helps us see the work and understand what is on our plate. It helps us prioritize the key actions we need, making sure that we focus on the high priority actions, and we can perhaps bump down some of the lower priority actions and remove frictions between processes. And so this allows us to reach outcomes faster, makes our goals clearer, and makes it clearer who is owning each part of that process. And to show you a quick graphic of how this functionally works inside of Asana, this is Asana's innovation model graph. And this is how work is structured in the tool. So the very, very bottom layer, we have tasks. Tasks are the actionable items, the things that are assigned out to individuals with due dates. They form the sort of checklist part of Asana, and they're the things that we're going to be completing in our day-to-day. Tasks sit inside projects. These can be end-to-end initiatives, or they can be actual parts of processes like a request intake or an ideation board. The layer above that is portfolios. Portfolios are effectively really smart folders of housing multiple projects and other portfolios inside them. And this is really where the sort of leadership layer and the visibility layer comes into play. It allows us to report on all the data inside those portfolios, and everything rolls up to those key goals, the key initiatives that we're working towards that are department and company wide. And the benefit of a tool like Asana is all of this sits in one tool. Now, to achieve something that looks like this, it doesn't happen automatically. We have to make sure that we're setting up our processes in the best way. And that's what we will work through today. Underpinning this is AI, and lots of tools on the market will talk about how powerful their AI features are. But the benefit of having AI built into your work management tool is that it sits next to the work that your team are doing. So it understands the context of your projects. It understands the context of the different tags you're using, those custom fields like priority or risk level. And this allows AI to really support us in reporting our data, giving updates to leadership, to flagging risks, and helping us optimize our processes. So throughout today, we're going to look a little bit about how AI can level up the processes that we take place. And Asana is there to help give us that ownership. So I just want to sort of show this slide here to sort of show and walk through some of the key features that we're going to look at today. We're going to look at task ownership, so the importance of due dates and task assignees, and the different layers and levels we can apply there. We're going to look at how to show progress updates in a really powerful way using some of Asana's AI features on some of those big initiatives, not just updating on small pieces of work, but sort of giving us a bird's eye view update of our initiatives as they progress. We're going to show you some amazing views of how to map dependencies, but also configure how our dependencies work inside the tool. And then we're going to showcase some of the wider reporting functionality with dashboards and reporting views. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive into our tool now. So I'm going to present my Asana. Here we go. So what you're seeing here is an example of a very busy Asana space with lots of tasks that are due up and coming. Now, what we want to do is we want to start picturing that work innovation graph model for some of our processes. So let's start by creating a portfolio. This is going to be a folder for our work. By clicking on the portfolios icon on the left-hand side and clicking the create button, we can now create a brand new folder. And this portfolio I'm going to call my operational initiatives. There we go. And I can select the privacy level here. So whether I decide to have this be public to my organization, Phoenix being my organization in this instance, this means that anyone in my organization can search for and find this portfolio, or I can make this portfolio private to members. So only the specific users or teams I add to my portfolio. For now, I'm going to keep mine open. And I'm just going to click through and go to my portfolio. And here's where I can start thinking about how I want to configure this portfolio. And what I want to do is I want to standardize how we generate work. This means that we can make sure that the projects that we are working on are consistent, making sure they have consistent permission levels, that the teams working on these projects are following a structure that I have control of. But most importantly, that the custom fields that we put inside this portfolio are going to automatically start capturing information that I can use to report on inside my dashboard. Well, I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a moment is by jumping to one that I created a little bit earlier. This is exactly the same as all we just created. The only difference is this one has some projects inside, and you can see I've added a custom field here. Now, I've added one called department because in our instance here, we're an operations department and we're looking to improve processes. So I want to have a custom field that I can use and pull information from. And for me, I'm using a single select custom field. This means that any one item in Asana can have only one of the following values. You'll notice that this custom field is added to my organization library. That's a key thing to identify. Essentially, custom fields that are added to the org library can be consistently reported on across a large selection of projects. If we didn't have this custom field added to the org library, then we wouldn't be able to roll up those values when it comes to reporting. And we're going to dive into this first project I've created, which I've dedicated to standardizing some of my work. You'll notice that this project has a really simple structure, just 3 sections, but we'll notice some icons sitting next to some of these sections that highlight that I've done a bit of magic to this project here. The first thing you'll notice is that my department custom field is sitting here as well. This is the same one at the portfolio level, so it has the exact same fields. And you'll notice I've also got a priority field here as well. Now, this is the one that is created by Asana, so I just simply added my custom field. And to do that, all we need to do is click on the plus icon, which says add field, and start typing in our field name, and you can see we can pull from our library right there. If you can't see a field from your library and you want to create one from scratch, we can do that just by clicking that add button at the very top. We can also manage our custom fields by going to the customize button in the right-hand side, going down to where it says fields, and we can manage the fields that we have added to this project. By adding these fields, I'm preloading this project with information that I can now report on when I convert these suggestions into full-blown projects. And to do that, I've created a form in Asana. Now, forms in Asana can be found by clicking Customize, going down to Forms, and adding a new form. And essentially, what forms enable us to do is standardize information. This is really helpful for building processes out for any team that uses ticketing, whether that is a creative team, design teams, teams requesting annual leave, whether it's IT teams gathering information about tickets and support requests. It allows us to ask specific questions, preloading our tasks with information. Now you can see here, the form that I've created here has a couple of questions. We have a question asking what is the process's priority? And you can see here it's connected to my priority field. If I delete some of these options here and sort of start from scratch, by simply typing in the field that I've got in my project here, I can select those options as part of my question. So I'm going to select my priority field. You can see it's preloaded the options I can select from. By toggling on this required option underneath my question, I can make sure that some of the questions here are mandatory, meaning that they cannot submit and complete this form without ensuring they answer those questions. So that's a great way of stopping any requests, bypassing essential information that's necessary for completing that action. And all I've done for this form is I've just dragged new questions in to add clarity. And what I've got is a really simple form that has essentially 4 questions. What is the priority of the task? What department is this initiative for? You can see it's linked to our custom field there. I've got a text question that's asking me to describe the process we want to innovate. And then the option to add any supporting files by using that files attachment there. And when I submit a request through this form, you can see the flow is really simple. I can give a priority, I can select a team, I can give a description, marketing request intake for design teams, something like that. And I can then add any files that we might need. When I click submit, the output of this form is going to be a task. And in just a moment, you will see if my demo works correctly. It should appear just in our backlog. There we go. I've got a couple of rules running in the background to help me rename some of these submissions, so they're a little less generic. You can see it started off as being the same name as my project, and now you can see it's renamed itself to set up marketing design request intake process. And you can see if I click into this task that right now it has captured all the information from my form in the description of the task. And for any of the questions that I had linked to custom fields are appearing as actual custom field values in my project. I'll show you the rules that I've created to help me rename some of this work. I used an AI Studio rule to read the submission and change the task title using AI. And the guidance here is your job is to rename the task to summarize what the process is for, read the submission and give the task a relevant title that is clear and action oriented. Really simple, but incredibly helpful. And so now we have a request process sitting in our backlog. And from an operational perspective, this is our way of essentially capturing a backlog of requests that we can then review. And I've set up a process to help me manage how my team review and action these requests. Simply, all we need to do in this process is assign this task. Now, task assigning in Asana is really, really essential. Right now, this task has no owner. There is no one responsible for completing or actioning this work. Whilst this task is visible inside this project, this task won't appear in anyone's My Tasks. My Tasks is that dedicated space that auto captures any work that is assigned to you and is not essentially on anyone's to-do list. And what we want to make sure is that we are able to give this task visibility. So all I'm going to do is very simply assign this task out. I'll assign it to myself in this instance, and I've got an automation that's going to automatically move my task when it's assigned to this reviewing section. And again, I've used rules inside my project to help me do this. When the task is assigned, check if it's in the backlog section and move it to the reviewing section. Really simple rule that just helps me structure my work. And already I'm starting to build out a process. I can also see what this process looks like by utilizing some of the specific custom views we have at our disposal. Custom views in Asana are different ways of presenting work inside of the tool. So in this project, we have automatically got a list view, what you're seeing here, a Kanban board view, just here, timeline view, which looks at tasks' due dates and displays them in a sequential timeline, and then a dashboard view, which is great for gaining insights. A view I really like to set up in projects where I am doing a lot of automation is the workload view. So by clicking the plus icon along the top of my project, I can add a new tab, and I'm going to select workflow. And what this will do is this will actually show me the different aspects of my project and where specific rules and automation comes in. So you can see here, it's showing me how tasks get added to my project, what happens to those tasks as they move through my project, and the different rules that activate at each stage. This can be really helpful when you have a very complex project with lots of stages and you're wanting to map and manage each stage. And you can also build rules from this view as well. So a great, helpful sort of Swiss Army knife that can be put up your sleeve in this instance. But what I want to do now is start to think about how I turn these requests into standardized projects. And this is all about removing the sort of busyness and the operational clarity of our project here. So what we want to do is we want to start standardizing the projects that we want to generate off the back of this. Now, designing projects in Asana is simple. We can create projects from scratch, or we can use templates. But what we can do, utilizing our process right here, is we can standardize the templates that we generate using this process. And also, we can preload the project with some of these custom fields, meaning when we add it to our portfolio, it already has data that we can leverage. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a rule to our project activation section here. I'm going to go to customize. I'm going to go down to rules. I'm going to go to add. I'm going to start a rule from scratch. I don't need AI Studio for this rule, so I'll toggle that off. And my action is going to be when a task is moved into that specific section. And I'm going to go for my project activation section. Now, the next part of our rule is deciding some conditional checks, the check if, and you can see here we can add branches. Now, depending on the kind of process you're designing, will determine what kind of branch we want to have here. For me, I want to use a different template based on the different departments we're using. So I'm going to click on the check if box. I'm going to scroll down to find my custom field options. And I'm going to select my department custom field that I added to my project. And here I can select what kind of template I'm going to pick for each of my different departments. So I'm going to use a marketing one to start with. And then for the do this, I'm going to scroll all the way down. I'm going to select this convert task to project option. And what this is going to do is this is going to convert the task that was submitted through our form with the custom field values, the description and descriptors, any subtasks we add to that task, and it's going to turn that into a project. We can select a specific template we can use. So for example, I might want to use my marketing campaign template here. And I'll always add this marketing campaign template to our portfolio, which I believe in my instance is my Q3 Ops initiative. You can see we've got some other options here around adding additional members, but for now I'm going to leave this here. And if I wanted to extrapolate this further, I could add the different branches for all of the different values I have inside of here. But for now, I'm just going to leave this here and I'm going to publish my rule. It's also worth mentioning, giving your rules a name is a really helpful way to stay on track of what kind of rules you're using. I'll call this my project conversion rule, and I click publish. Now in this process, all I need to do is I just need to move this task into my project activation stage. And what this is going to do, it's going to convert my task into a project, and it's going to use the template I selected, and it's going to add my project to my Q3 Ops Initiatives portfolio. I'm going to move there and we'll see this coming in just a moment. And what you'll do is you'll see that my project that gets activated is actually going to automatically pre-fill the department and the priority fields based on what we selected in that form process. You can see here, set up marketing design request intake process. That was the name of my request. You can see it's generated my project and it's automatically given it a priority and a marketing and a tag against the department. If we just used a template or we just added a project to this portfolio, none of these custom fields along the top would be pre-filled. The contents inside the project will be whatever we selected our template and however we built our template. But the custom fields along the top are only inherited through an intake process built out in Asana. You can see from a high level here as well, the progress of some of our projects here. And this is where the reporting structure of Asana really kicks in. But before we dive into that, I'm just going to open up the project that we created from our template process. You can see because our template had pre-filled tasks and preset due dates, all of our project is essentially standardized with key owners and key due dates. The benefit of giving your task due dates is you give a clear cadence of when the action needs to be completed. But let's say I wanted to create some dependencies. I wanted to make sure that some tasks needed to be completed before the next piece can be actioned. You may notice that in this project, we have a couple of different icons next to the task that you may not have seen before. The standard task type is a regular task, and that appears with a checkbox icon. You'll notice that this create the creative brief task has an hourglass next to it. And that is because this task has dependencies. So this task is currently being blocked by the two previous tasks. And by clicking on that task, I can see what the dependency settings are for this task. If I wanted to build out a dependency flow, all I need to do is click on my task, find where it says dependencies, click the plus icon, and then I'm going to select my previous task, create messaging and positioning doc. There we go. And you'll see in just a moment, once I switch this to being blocked by, it's going to appear as an hourglass. And what that means is that this task is being blocked by the previous task and is blocking the create the creative brief. As we complete these tasks, it will actually unlock the task that is dependent on it. You can see our task changed from being an hourglass to a checkbox, and we can now mark this task as complete. In your settings of Asana, you can actually change the kind of notifications you receive via email or via any of your other connected apps when work is unblocked. By default, Asana opts you in to all of the updates to make sure that you have key visibility. But turning some of these off is a great way of sort of filtering out that email inbox. But this is one that I think is really important to leave in. It gives you clear visibility of when your work is now ready to be completed. We can also build automation off the back of this. So we can actually have rules triggered from when work becomes unblocked. Let me show you what this looks like. So I created a rule when, I'm going to scroll down, to see that when task is no longer blocked, we can then add our conditional checks. But for now, what I'm going to do is when task is no longer blocked, the action will be to simply add a comment to that task at mentioning the assignee. There we go. And we'll say this task is no longer blocked. By using variables, it means that we are able to reference at mention specific aspects of that task. In this instance, we're using the assignee, so they will receive a notification. This is a great way to give visibility on those clear owners of when they can jump in and start completing that work. However, when working at scale, going through every single task can be quite load heavy to start mapping out some of those dependencies. And there are some specific views we can actually create to help set up those dependencies. The timeline view being a really helpful one here. So what this is going to do is this is going to display all my tasks that have due dates in a sequential timeline. And just as my timeline loads, we'll start to be able to connect tasks together using nodes to set up those dependencies. It's a really helpful way to start to really build out the different dependencies. And you can see here, tasks that are already dependent will appear with an arrow attached to them. What we can do is we can hover over a task and we can select on some of the nodes at the very edges of that task to start bringing and connecting. So let's say I wanted to actually set up some dependencies between this create creative assets to support campaign and the landing page design. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select this node at the end of my task. And I'm simply going to drag it to my other task. And you can see here, it's created a dependency. I'll do the same for the task next to it. Now, depending on the settings that we set up in our project, will determine how our dependencies behave when it comes to date shifting. By going to options, scrolling down to dependency settings, we can actually set dependency settings for this project. And what this means is this is going to determine how due dates change and shift when dependent tasks change due dates. So we have a couple of options here. We can select a maintain buffer. And what this means is that due dates will always maintain the distance between them. So if I've got a task due on the 5th of February and a task due on the 10th of February, and those tasks are dependent on each other, and I shift the due date of the task that's due on the 5th to the 10th, then my task that is originally due on the 10th will now shift 5 days in advance because there's a 5-day gap between those two due dates. Consume buffer means that task will be able to be flexible between the due dates, but will never overlap. And you can see the icons here will reflect how they will behave in your timeline view. This is very dependent on the kind of processes that you are designing and can be configured in the template view. So all of your projects moving forward can have the same standardized way of having those dependencies set up. Now, as our task and our project is getting completed, there are going to be lots of updates taking place, whether that is task getting completed, due date shifting, with a task get reassigned, or different priority fields change throughout a project. And when you're working at scale and are collaborating with lots of different users in Asana, giving some of those project-wide updates is really important. And there is a feature that enables us to do this. You'll see next to the project title, we have a set status field. And what this enables us to do is provide an insight into how this project is going. There are 6 different fields a status of a project can have. That is on track, at risk, off track, on hold, and then the 2 completion statuses are complete or dropped. Now, depending on how your organization determines whether a project is on track or at risk or off track is totally up to you, but it's really important that we have a standardized approach to this for our organization. So determining what that kind of cadence looks like is really, really key. Let's say I wanted to produce a status update for this project here. I'm simply going to select my status update. I'll decide what kind of status update I'd like to give, whether it's on track, at risk, off track, and I'll start building my summary here. I can give some insights into completion statuses through text. I can drag insights from my dashboard directly into my status update. I can continue adding sections and filling out my status update. However, at scale and at large complex projects, getting a really clear idea of how this project is progressing requires you to get in contact with lots of different stakeholders, to have a really clear bird's eye view of the project. And when you're working in an agile or in a fast-paced environment, this can take a long time and can really eat into the kind of time that we have. And this is where a layer of AI is really helpful. We can actually have Asana build a smart status update for us. Now we can provide guidance to this status update. I want to see all of the major completion progress and any risks. And I will draft an update. Now, Asana's AI has all the context of your Asana instance. It understands the projects, the tasks, the descriptions. It's able to read those custom fields and analyze those comment threads. It'll only be able to access what you have access to. So if you don't have access to the project, you won't be able to provide a status update. It enables us to be really sort of nuanced on the kind of status updates we're able to give, and will only sort of display what you have access to. But what it's going to do is going to read that project. It's going to generate a status update, and in just a couple of seconds, we were able to create a status update. And you can see this is actually pulled directly from those tasks that I completed. And it fills out all the information for my status update really clearly here. Now, of course, like anything, using AI requires a set of human eyes to review and double check. It can get things wrong. And so it's important to make sure that you do have that extra layer of checking just by simply reading through your update. I use this as a good opportunity to add some of my highlights from the right-hand side here. Anything that is highlighted in gray is actually at mentioning a item in Asana. So we will be able to click on any of those highlighted items and actually see those in Asana. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to post my status update here. Now, where do these status updates live? Firstly, they live in the overview tab of your project. You can see on the right-hand side, my status update lives right here. But for visibility for your leadership, it also displays in the status update of your portfolio. So this is a really helpful way to see at just a glance how your projects are progressing, which projects are on track versus at risk. But also, this isn't just valuable for a tag. I can at any point click into this and see my status updates. And as I provide more and more status updates, they will stack on the left-hand side here. So you can really see the trail of that progress that the project has made. We can also request to be reminded every Friday for this, and also get notifications on our status updates too. Your leadership can also request status updates from this screen here as well. When we have status updates in our Asana, I'm just going to quickly draft one here. You can toggle on this remind me to update every Friday. And what this will do is this will produce a task in your My Tasks just for you to produce a status update for your task. You can see here, it's automatically remembered what the guidance I put in last time. So you can really easily produce these status updates quickly and efficiently. And this can stack and layer up as well. We have 5 projects in this portfolio, all could be giving different status updates. And we can actually draft status updates for the entire portfolio. And when we do this, we can select which projects inside our portfolio we pull into these status updates that we draft with AI. I think this is probably Asana's are one of Asana's most powerful tools in terms of saving time and giving visibility to your stakeholders on the progress of your projects, and is a really helpful way of providing those touch point updates to your leadership. We can also represent this kind of updates and this data in dashboard views. Asana has a dedicated view type that is designed for giving insights into the work. Just like how with status updates, where it's pulling from live task data, your charts and widgets in these dashboards can be customized, configured, and preset to be whatever you need to see insight for. At the portfolio level, it's going to give us insight into the projects and the tasks that sit inside them. I've set this one up here to show the total tasks inside this project, what's been completed so far, what's left to be completed, and what's showing overdue. I have a widget here that is breaking down all of my projects and the number of tasks that's inside them. I'm using a stacked bar widget type to really show the breakdown of what are the statuses of those tasks. So not just the total tasks, but how many are completed versus overdue. This can be a really helpful configuration for your leadership to quickly reference to see which projects are moving in the right direction, looking at some of those status updates at a glance. And the best part about this is we're able to quickly dive into these projects. So for example, if I wanted to very quickly see those 13 unscheduled tasks for my setup, marketing, design, request intake process, all I need to do is just click on that pink bar, and it's going to show me all of those tasks that are currently unscheduled. I can now very easily start to preset and assign these out to individuals, setting due dates as I go to make sure that they have a clear cadence of when they fall and who is responsible. I can do this at bulk by multi-selecting and assigning these out. And if I refresh and just go back to my my widgets here, you'll see as we go back, here we go. You'll see the unassigned tasks have now changed, and it's automatically updated my widgets in real time. Designing a dashboard that suits your needs is really, really important. And we can have as many views along the top here to configure specific dashboards. Let's say your leadership want to have dashboards across multiple portfolios and need something that's a little bit more free and not tied to a specific one place in Asana. That's where we can actually use the Insights tab on the left-hand side to generate specific dashboards for anything in our Asana that we have access to. This is really helpful for creating leadership views at a glance. I've created one here called my global dashboard, and this is looking at all projects across my Asana instance. And you can see here, this gives me a really clear understanding of what the overall health of my organization is in terms of what's sitting on our plate and what needs to be completed. I can see that we've got over 1,625 overdue tasks in this demo instance here. We need to get a bit faster at completing some of those tasks. But I can easily see what those tasks are by clicking into them. And I can make some judgment calls, or perhaps ask and instruct teams to reschedule and update their tasks. I can actually see which items are contributing here. I've preset this and created this dashboard to be really helpful for me, and actually starred it to my star bar. So you can see here, I can easily quickly access this global dashboard that I've created, and it's just at my fingertips. I can also share this dashboard to my team as well. So right now, it's just me who has access. If I wanted to add it to my leadership team, I could simply invite them in, and they would be able to join and view and access. In terms of managing your team's workload, the dashboard view is a really helpful way to do that. Looking at upcoming tasks this week, but per assignee is a helpful view. We can also have a more intentional view to manage this kind of work. And that's where the resourcing tab comes in. So what we can do is we can look at the workload of our team and look at all of the projects that they're working on. You can see here, I've added all of my team members into this workload view, and it looks quite busy right now, but what we're looking at is along the top, we have our date, and then under each member, we have all the tasks that they're assigned in the projects they're working in. Right now, we're looking at estimated time. So we're looking at the estimated time assigned to all of these tasks, and enables us to really clearly see how much time our team are roughly spending on their work. But we could also just look at task count and just look at the number of tasks assigned to those individuals. We can see the total number of tasks assigned in any day. And what I love about this is we can easily move tasks between team members as we go. To bounce back to the estimated time, it's also a great way to set capacities as well. So whether your team have a standard working cadence, or whether you're working with different contractors, or perhaps you have some part-time members, we can set time estimations and capacity estimations for each of them. Let's say Hayden only works a 20-hour week because he's part-time. We can set capacity, and what that will do is it'll actually change what sort of peaks and troughs we can see here against each of these individuals. Anything that exceeds that weekly value will appear as a red highlight here. Anything that's in capacity will appear as a purple trough. And I can see here that Hannah has quite a lot on her plate. It looks like on a couple of days, she's spending nearly 22 hours of her working day on some items. I need to make some judgment calls and reassign some of the work out. So this is a really helpful way to see the operational workload across your teams. To summarize then, we've looked at building a process to standardize how we generate projects, freeloading some of these creations with custom fields to ensure that we're reporting in the right way. We've looked at creating portfolios to manage all related work, and using templates to standardize the project structures. We've looked at using status updates to provide insights into how that work is progressing, and using AI to streamline the process of actually generating those status updates. We've looked at different custom views, specifically dashboard views, to help give insights. And we've looked at creating dedicated dashboards across our projects and our portfolios using the reporting tab and looking at workload in the resourcing. This is typically the sort of tool set that we see in Asana for managing operational workload. Now, what this looks like for your team is going to be very, very specific to your operational cadences and those workflows. But this enables us to give a sort of a head start for you in how we generate our workflows and our processes. What I will do is I'm going to present back my slides here. And there are a couple of actions that we can start doing immediately to start building that operational excellence inside our organization. Number one, we need to define what our cadences look like. What does on track versus at risk mean? What kind of custom fields are we going to be using, and what conventions are we going to use as we roll out our Asana? It's really important to capture this. Sometimes we see organizations create a dedicated project with all of the information inside, and each task has a description that defines what each of these different conventions would be. But as long as we're being consistent, it means that the reporting structure we use is going to be really clear for your leadership. Ensuring that we make sure that tasks that are sort of actions have clear owners by using the assignee field, and ensuring that we also provide due dates to those actions to make sure that we are giving that task the ability to become overdue or upcoming. We can build out some of those dashboards immediately inside of your Asana by using the dashboard views, or creating a dedicated reporting dashboard by using the reporting tab. And we can start introducing a weekly cadence to review and plan of how we're going to tackle some of our actions. We can create recurring tasks in our My Tasks or create tasks inside the projects we're already operating in. We can also set up some of those reminders for those status updates inside the status update feature. And so from there, you can start building a map of your operating sort of structure. Using tools that help design flow diagrams are a great place to start, and enables us to actually really picture what the flow of work looks like. You can then start to layer in visibility by deciding at what point we want to start reporting. Is that going to be at the portfolio level? Is that reporting at the project level? We can start to think about where AI is going to help us, whether that's AI Studio to help us standardize naming conventions, or whether we use some of Asana's AI features like the smart statuses or smart chat to help give insights into that work. And then making sure that your team has dedicated Asana champions to really help be your sort of single source of truth in each little squad or team is a really helpful way to support that rollout. Any questions you have, you can get in touch with Generation Digital, and we'd be more than happy to scope out and look at how we can support. Generation Digital also have the ability to offer services where customer success managers like myself are able to come into your organization and build out processes for you and alongside you. And that means that we are training you up and you're also getting the best kind of structure for your organization. If you have any questions around what that kind of thing looks like, please don't hesitate to go to Generation Digital's website and we'd be more than happy to get in touch. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this webinar useful, and I hope that you're able to start building out some of your operational excellence inside your Asana.